So just want to welcome everyone to our weekly call with Mayor Brocato. This morning we're joined by Lee Davis and Ms. Britt, who are going to talk to us about some of the economic things that are going on in Alabama and more specifically in Birmingham-Hoover. I want to share a couple of things that I share every week, but on behalf of the Hoover Area Chamber of Commerce, we are very pleased to be joined by our guests and by the mayor each week as we do these. We will have plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. If you will, just type those into the chat and send them, and I will ask our participants at the end any questions. I know the mayor also typically has some questions to run through at that time. I also have a couple of slides to share this week at the end, so I will do that as well. But let's not waste time with the housekeeping and get things rolling. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to Mayor Brocato here in one second. I'm unmuting you, Mayor, so just one second. There you go, sir.
Great, thank you. Well, welcome everyone. We really appreciate having everyone back today for our town hall meeting, and I'm just so delighted to have two ladies of just wonderful caliber on our town hall meeting today, and Lee Davis and Katie Britt. Thank y'all so much for taking out about an hour, maybe a little less of your time, because I know that y'all are very, very busy. But we're grateful that you would spend these next 50 or 60 minutes with us. And so let me just start by sharing a little bio of each of these ladies. Lee Davis. Lee is the Vice President for Economic and Community Development at Alabama Power. She leads a team responsible for economic, community, and commercial business development across the state. Before serving in her current role, Lee held several leadership positions in the company and served as president of the Alabama Power Foundation. Lee holds a bachelor's degree and a law degree from the University of Alabama, and she also has an MBA from Samford University. Lee, welcome today. Thank you. And then we have with us Katie Britt. Katie, good morning to you. In January 2019, Katie began serving as president of the Business Council of Alabama. She is a native of Enterprise, Alabama, and like Lee, Katie also attended the University of Alabama, where she earned her undergraduate degree and law degree. I'm curious if y'all were in school together. One of you can let me know that in the end there. Before becoming president of BCA, Katie served as chief of staff to the United States Senator Richard Shelby, and that position was one of several that she held over a decade while working for the senator in Washington, D.C. So thank you so much for y'all joining, and we'll start with Lee. Lee, if you could just share with us your thoughts on COVID-19 and just any other thoughts that you may have surrounding economic development in our state, our metro area, and certainly the city of Hoover.
Sure. And I guess I'll start with answering the question about the potential for overlap with Katie. I'm older than Katie. I'm quite a bit older than Katie. but you know, it was sweet of you to even, tag us in the same age. I will say this, I have admired Katie for a long time. Watching her with her leadership at the university, with Senator Shelby, just through a variety of things. It's really fun to watch other leaders in our community. So it's an honor to not only be with her today in this town hall meeting, but also I appreciate the invitation, Mayor, to be able to join y'all. So little bit of sharing there. I may start a little bit and just give you a little overview of kind of generally where Alabama Power's been in general, a little bit of then about how our economic development team's working. I'll keep it relatively high level for now, and then we can build on questions as we go. But I first have to give a big shout out to our employees. A lot of these employees work in y'all's communities. A lot live in the city of Hoover. Our folks have been doing a great job serving our customers day in and day out. We've got some folks on the front line who have really had to think of ways in which that they perform their duties safely and also take care of their families. And we've had just as many employees who are staying home sheltering in place who are also doing the same. And it's been really phenomenal to watch how those employees are not just serving our company, but serving the state and, quite frankly, serving their communities such as Hoover and the Birmingham area. We really want to make sure we're being there for our customers and communities, and we hope that y'all feel that. Some of the things that we've done specifically in the last few months, just to make sure that y'all have a feel for what we do and how we can help. We have suspended disconnections. We have suspended late payments for both residential and business customers affected by the COVID virus. And we'll continue to work with each and every customer to help identify solutions to meet their needs. So I want to reiterate that. I think y'all have seen some press this week that really we want to be there to serve our customers. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, and we just want to make sure that we're providing that type of quality customer service and accessibility. We also want folks to know with our business offices that are in the region, they're still there while we've closed the offices per se for traffic. We've still got the 24/7 kiosks, drop boxes, the drive-throughs, and again, obviously, our service centers are open for business. We also recently partnered with UAB, the University of Alabama, and Mercedes to provide about 9,000 pieces of PPE face shields for frontline workers. That was something that was important for us to make sure we were taking care of those on the front line. I know you'll have a significant number of employees that work in healthcare in your community. So again, it's about taking care of others. And then our foundation pledged $1 million at the beginning, I guess in March, early in March, and are continuing to try to look for opportunities to support through our business trust, the foundation, other ways with community service, our local communities. And last, we've been working through our marketing organization to really work with our industrial and commercial customers as they've had to adjust their operations to really be there for, again, the folks in our community. So our goal is to continue to kind of make sure our customers are receiving that type of high level of service that they trust us to deliver. And we do that while protecting the safety and health of not just our customers, but our employees. So that's just a little bit of an overview of where we've been focused. Just to touch on our economic and community development team, I oversee a group that has kind of statewide responsibility for community development, economic development, commercial development, business development. When we think about what economic development looks like, a big piece of that is existing industry. We've been heavily focused in working with coalitions and allies related to small business support, particularly right now. Whether that's through Secretary Canfield at the Department of Commerce, through the Birmingham Business Alliance, through our division leadership. Tony Smoke heads up the Birmingham division, and his team oversees a lot of that grassroots economic development at the local level. So making sure that we're supporting his team and ultimately the local economic development organizations to ensure that as we're trying to troubleshoot and problem solve our way through this uncertain time, that we also have a great sense of optimism and really hope for the future. And I do think, and maybe I'm just a glass half full kind of girl, but while there are a lot of tough things going on right now, there's a lot of optimism related to how we will be resilient and persevere and come out of this doing well and positioned to be even better. But again, that's a lot of roll up your sleeves and hard work that we're going to continue to do in the coming months and the coming years, both for Hoover, the region, and the state of Alabama.
Thank you. That's great. Now, I've got a bunch of questions to ask you. But thank you so much, and I do appreciate what Alabama Power means to the community and particularly the economic development. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to hearing from you. We got Katie.
There we go. Sorry about that. I had a little trouble unmuting. I should be able to get the hang of this by now. Mayor, thank you so much for your kind words. It is an honor to join you and the chamber today. We continue to love working with you and everything that's going on in Hoover and getting to be a part of that. A special thanks to Lee. That admiration that she shared goes both ways. I have always loved watching her and her leadership style and have worked hard to emulate the good things that she has done throughout her career and obviously for the community at large. So really glad to be on here with all of you today and saw a lot of familiar faces. I saw Allison on here, and Allison and I actually worked with Senator Shelby together. She was my intern coordinator. So love continuing to, and obviously she's good there from Hoover, and see representatives on here. And so happy to be a part of this today. To tell you a little bit about what we have been doing at BCA, obviously, I feel like the words unprecedented and challenging have, we are getting to the point where they feel like they're overused, but they are so spot on with regards to what we are dealing with. We started immediately hearing from businesses across the state, Mayor. I mean, getting phone calls and people, you could hear it in their voice. I mean, genuinely terrified about what they were going to do and how they were going to push forward. I mean, if you think in particular in a small business setting, a lot of people use their nest egg or, use save up money to be able to start that small business. They may have construction loans or other outstanding things. And so trying to keep their doors open and their payroll and make good on all their obligations was something that we started hearing, right at the beginning. How am I going to do this? How are we going to walk through? We immediately realized that we needed to be a conduit of information for business around the state, as well as being their advocate, listening to what people had to say and taking that and making sure that the people and the decision makers from DC to Montgomery heard those concerns. I will tell you, we decided, particularly when the CARES Act funding, there were the three different bills that came out, boom, 1, 2, 3. There were a lot of questions about that, a lot of confusion, a lot of people that were kind of wondering, how do I do this? We found, Mayor, that kind of the people that had an attorney that they always worked with, or maybe an accountant that they talked with on a regular basis, were able to quickly navigate what they needed to do to get in line to secure that federal funding. As you all know, Alabama, we have, I think as defined by the SBA, we have 94% or 99.4% of our businesses are small business as deemed by the SBA. And we found that there were so many Alabamians that did not have those relationships in order to be able to kind of quickly get their house in order and get in line. Because that money from the federal government was first come, first serve, BCA wanted to make sure that every single Alabama business had access to the information and the expertise they needed to be able to take advantage of the CARES Act. Because of that, we did what we called, put together the BCA Small Business Exchange. It was a really neat thing to be a part of. We partnered with Alabama Public Television, and that was we certainly appreciate their time and partnership on that. We brought together some of the best and brightest from the top to the bottom of the state, and attorneys and bankers and accountants. And we did a program where we had the governor and lieutenant governor, the secretary of labor. We had Rosemary Elabash with NFIB. We had Jason Isbell with the Bankers Association. We had Carl Jameson with Jameson Money Farmer to talk through some of the issues that people were dealing with, to give them some information. And then we opened the phone lines. We had a 3-hour phone bank one night and a 3-hour phone bank the next, just to say, hey, call in with your questions. And I was so proud. There were so many Birmingham entities, law firms and accounting firms that stepped up to the plate, some right there in Hoover, to answer questions for all of these small businesses across the state and help them get the information they needed so that they could take full advantage of the CARES Act funding. So that was a neat thing to be a part of. I will tell you though, as you all know, Treasury and SBA, they continue to put out regulations. It seems like it's kind of an ever moving target. So we're trying to continue to be that resource for business and and help be a conduit for that information. So we have resources on our page. We are doing free webinars and that kind of thing, like so many others. We're partnering with the chambers across the state, CCAA, and all of the chambers to make sure that we are driving that information and knowledge down all the way to the local level. So we know that there is still a lot of things to do. We have been very inspired, as Lee mentioned, just by communities coming together and innovative approach of our businesses, and look forward to continuing to work with everybody to keep their doors open and keep Alabama's economy moving forward.
Yes, that's very, very interesting, and you're right. So many, that's a big number. Did you say 99% of our businesses are small businesses?
Mayor, that's correct. So 99.4% of our businesses are small businesses in the state, as deemed by SBA. It makes up, I believe, about 47% of our workforce are employed by those small businesses. So it's such an interesting statistic, and it's a lot higher than I would have thought.
Yeah, me as well. So, you know, we felt the same way March the 13th in terms of so many of these small businesses would be like, from March 12th, they were operating as normal. March 13th, they're essentially out of business or changed their business model. So we did something similar to y'all and actually worked with your group as well. We set up a business hotline where our economic development team could be there to answer those questions and help them navigate through the difficult federal process. And that's so important what y'all did as well on a statewide basis. And I know just from our little area what it meant to some of these businesses, and for y'all to do that on statewide, because every city obviously can't do what, you know, all the things that we can do, and certainly we can't do some of the things that even the larger cities are doing, but it's so important that people have access to information like that. But I really do appreciate it. So Lee, just starting out with you, how do you see COVID-19 changing Alabama Power's economic development strategies? Any opportunities you're seeing?
Yep, great question. You know, I would say our focus areas are a lot. I'll give you kind of some of our focus areas that we look at. We look at technology, you know, the tech workforce, healthcare, life sciences, automotive, metals, data centers, a string of others. I would tell you that those focus areas really don't change. I think it's the approach to economic development may change in terms of even what we're doing right now, which is leveraging ways for people or stakeholders to remotely be able to see who we are and what we do. So when we think about project activity, there's still economic development projects that are continuing. And our goal is to make sure that we're leveraging technology. So if site selection consultants and others aren't able to physically make the trip, they can virtually make the trip. That we can very quickly turn around site requests in ways that continue to keep project activity going. And quite frankly, we've had some that are on fairly quick timelines, you know, to address PPE manufacture, mask, other things, to ensure that we can use that to really keep that pace going, to help make sure that we're keeping up with some of the quicker projects. Some of these may even be temporary projects to meet temporary needs. I would also tell you that focus on small business is paramount. We work very closely with our divisions in terms of how we're providing information, support, troubleshooting related to small business, particularly with certain industries most hardest hit. One example y'all had mentioned was restaurants, in terms of how we're able to hopefully play a role in supporting those in our communities. I'll give a shout out to whether it's BCA, Commerce, NFIB through Rosemary. It has been really wonderful to be able to pick up a phone, have conversations, ask questions, because we're all trying to figure out how to take on certain circumstances and have things that are actionable. And it's been the amount of collaboration we do in this state, I just can't reiterate how strong that is. I know there are times where we hear about disagreements, or competition. But in the economic development world, there is a strong sense of collaboration because we understand that the success of this community and the state is built around ensuring that others are successful. So it just, I know that's a long-winded answer, except to say that, you know, we're still open for business, and we're still working really hard with folks in Hoover, BBA, and others to keep that going and to leverage opportunities that come sometimes in tough circumstances.
I'm going to come back with a question, follow up on that later. But Katie, you're serving on the governor's task force. Am I right or wrong?
That's correct. Yes.
So, gosh, what a challenging job that's been. And I've talked often with Joe Bonner. I've been on many conference calls with the governor, and she's getting so much pressure from so many different industries and mayors and the federal government, the senators, the congressmen, and our own local folks. And, you know, you can, regardless of where people stand with her decisions, I'm very proud of her, how she's handled everything. And she has not let pressure, political pressure, be put on her in terms of making her decisions. She's right or wrong. She's made her decisions based on what she thought was right, and didn't let let all the noise influence her. And that's so difficult. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you stand on or what she did, but I admire her for that. So just, if you would, share a little bit about that and how y'all have worked through those many, many problems.
Absolutely. You are correct in that you alluded to this, but there have been no shortage of opinions when it comes to how we go about doing these things. And I will have to say, again, like you mentioned, regardless of kind of where you land on the actual decisions that were made, I think we can all trust that the governor, as she has been in her entire tenure in that office, is being thoughtful in her approach, and what she decides is genuinely what she believes is best for Alabamians. And sometimes I often say, you know, leaders sometimes have a lot more information than we do about different things. And so when we disagree, we have to trust that we have elected them to make those kind of tough decisions for us. Interestingly, you know, I'll tell you, one of the most challenging has really been retail, and Lee mentioned that. You know, you had larger stores that were able to sell products that smaller stores weren't. So I think that there really were some unintended consequences to some of the orders. And I think, obviously, you know, hindsight is always 20/20, but, you know, everyone was kind of sort of making decisions. And I believe the governor was, obviously, with what she had at her fingertips at the time. I will say, too, in particular, the timing of things, you know, with the retail, and this is obviously with that being such a stronghold there in Hoover as well, with the Easter holiday coming right when retail kind of needed to close its doors to help us flatten the curve, I think that made it even more challenging for our business, because most people had really elevated what they had in their store in anticipation for Easter. So we saw, you know, a lot of conversations surrounding that. I will tell you, you know, working with the health professionals and their thoughts, and then obviously hearing from the business community and their thoughts, it's been an interesting dynamic to try to mesh those. I think, obviously, the implications on hospitals and their bottom line was probably something that people didn't immediately tune into, but we've seen across the state, you know, when you cut out elective surgeries and you cut that bed capacity down, as many of you know, we have challenges with rural healthcare across the state, and those hospitals being able to keep their doors open. When those procedures were cut, we saw that struggle elevate even more. And so, you know, there are so many different facets to those decisions, I will have to say, and very different opinions on them. But at the end of the day, I think what everyone should leave with is that the governor has taken those opinions in and you know, is doing the best she can. So even if our industry sectors don't necessarily agree with different things, I think we can at least rest on that.
Yes. Well, thank you for serving on that. That's a difficult job. Before I ask any other questions, Paul, do you see anyone's had any questions out in the queue there?
I do. One of our more experienced individuals, Allison Seinecker, wanted to ask Katie about federal stimulus dollars. Was there a breakdown of how the state wants to spend it on is there a breakdown on the BCA website of how the state intends to spend it, or are there opportunities for city and more close to home Hoover businesses to tap into those dollars, and when do we think that funding might become available?
Sorry, y'all just got a little bit of a window into being a mom and working from home as my child just yelled at me, "Mom!" So I apologize. Yes, and I did not catch the very end, but the federal.
I was going to say, I can go through it again. I know how that goes. So federal stimulus dollars, is there a breakdown of how the state wants to spend it, and is that highlighted on the BCA website? And also, will there be opportunities for the city and more close to home Hoover businesses to tap into those dollars? And lastly, when do we think funding might become available?
Yes, so those are all great questions. And I will say we did put that out yesterday. And so I am not sure if it's made it to our website, but I will make a note. It should be up there, but if it's not, it will be up there momentarily because we did send that out to our membership yesterday. As you all know, there was kind of obviously a back and forth there. And I would probably, Representative Wheeler would be the best person to answer that question as opposed to me. But I will say that there is a breakdown of how that's intended to spend. We are hopeful too that there will be some real thought, particularly to the small business segment of that. I was on a call earlier this morning. As we all know, there were a lot of people that applied for the federal stimulus money, the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. Unfortunately, for the way that went, it was very vague to start with, you're eligible if this, this, and this. As those regulations have come out, as I kind of referenced earlier, we all kind of feel like it's a moving target. We have found that there were people that actually applied, received money, and then figured out that they were not eligible. So one thing that we are trying to do, just in particular, since she mentioned that federal component, I certainly want this group to hear, is just because you got the money doesn't actually mean you're eligible, which I know just seems totally counterproductive, but we are dealing with the federal government here. So I would say check that and make sure that you are in fact eligible. I know some obviously 501c3s, 501c19s, but there were some other 501cs that had applied that actually need to send the money back. I would also say very in particular with regards to that portion of the funding, make sure that you jump through every hoop they've asked you to, because it is important. We want every business in Alabama for that money to turn into an actual, forgivable loan, more of a grant, obviously, than a loan that has to be repaid. So as those things come out, make sure you're checking with your accountant, you're talking with your banker, and you're making sure that you meet all of those needs. That being said, we have seen some holes, in particular with small business. And so we're hopeful that we can gather some information and really kind of speak to that directly. So what I would ask of this group, if there is anything we need to be advocating for, if there is kind of sort of something that slipped through the cracks that you all are seeing, please let us know, because we want to make sure that we're thorough in our ability to communicate to the governor and the legislature exactly what's needed.
Great. Thank you very much. Those were very in-depth answers. Lee, next question for you comes from someone you might know as well, Mr. Greg Knighton. But Lee and Hoover, we're putting a great emphasis on small business. And we want to thank you so much for what your team is doing. But you mentioned life sciences. We're fortunate to be home to BioCryst and BioLife, which is a division of Takeda, and BioHorizons. What are your team's thoughts on how this sector can pivot and thrive moving forward, and how do we best help them?
No, that's an awesome question, because I will say this: that is huge that those businesses are here in our backyard. As I think everybody is seeing, the life sciences is on a center stage right now. And there's so much this region has to offer, not just in our state and in our country, but on a global level. So I would tell you that this is one of those opportunities for us to really be able to leverage during this crisis. And even with project activity and interest that we're seeing, that lines up. So we are very, that's a big priority, a big interest for our team, how we engage with others, how we're engaged with project activity. As far as how, Greg, you and your team can best help them, or help us, I would say we've got to continue to have those dialogues and conversations. A big piece is not just waiting for those entities to knock on our door. It's about that proactive business development. We are engaged in a lot of those discussions right now in terms of what we look at, how we look at things, how we grow that part of our business, support that existing industry. So I would say, let's keep talking. Let's keep working together, and just know that that one, to me, has a whole lot of runway. And I think, again, we're doing the right kind of collaboration that will help also our economy rebound quicker as a state than maybe some others.
Thank you, Lee. Mayor, right now, I do not have any other questions ahead of me, so I'll turn it over to you.
I've got a few more myself. So I'll ask this to both of you. And we were reading somewhere where there's like a 33% workforce confidence an index out there where 33% of the workforce in Alabama, or excuse me, the southeastern region, had a confidence in us returning to work quicker and rebounding quicker and things like that, which is good. And when I look across the country, and I think about, this kind of follows up with Greg's questions too, the different types of industries that we could attract. Do you see, you hear, particularly out on the West Coast and maybe up on the East Coast, how expensive it is to do business and how cumbersome sometimes it is, and the regulations and so on and so forth. Is this a real opportunity for us to share how Alabama is open for business and it's a great place? Everything from, just the family value aspect of it to the cost of living and all the opportunities, the recreational opportunities that are here. Do you see this as a kind of an opening for us? And
Katie, we're both smiling. You want to go first? So we'll tag on this one together. I think we're both smiling. One, because both of us are from this state, and honest to goodness, and I know we both lived in DC and other places, I always enjoy helping folks really understand what a jewel our state is. I'd say to folks, if you can get someone to put their foot in the soil here, that is more than half the battle. I would tell you the quality of life, the cost of living, the fact that we do really work hard at all levels, local up to the state, to really work together to make regulations and other types of things not as cumbersome as they could be, I think is huge. I really do. So I say that because that's a big piece of where we get up as economic development teams. And when we're traveling, or virtually traveling right now, even looking at our international trade missions, that's where our focus is. And I do think when you look across the country, we have a great value proposition. And the big piece is just getting folks having the opportunity to get a foot in that door. And once we do, I think, we always end up with a really strong chance at locating. And particularly, again, in this region's always been very competitive. I'll let Katie build on that, because I know that's
I think she said it beautifully. I will say, she's right. If you can get people here, it makes all the difference. I think one thing that's so neat about Alabama is we are not only diverse in our geography, from like mountains to beaches to lakes to plains, but also I think we are incredibly diverse in our industry. And having spent some time in DC, you see very quickly that not everybody's state has all of the things that we do. You kind of take it for granted that there are so many different options. And as you were mentioning, bioscience and everything that's growing there in Birmingham, we've got so much to offer. And I will have to say, additionally, having a business-friendly elected, from top to bottom, mayor, the legislature, the governor, the executive branch, lieutenant governor, all of them being business-minded and realize that small business, those are job creators. Those are members of the community. And the thinking is that obviously the fruitfulness of an employer is passed down to an employee. and to a community at large. And so the stronger that those are, the stronger we all are. And that is unique. I mean, I have colleagues that serve in this similar position in other states, and I will tell you that is not the way it is everywhere else. So I think that's one thing that we all work so hard to do. Lee and obviously the people that are there at Alabama Power and so many different other entities at BCA, at the Chamber, is making sure that we not only recruit business here, but then once they're here, we protect that business in a way that it can continue to grow and be a meaningful part of our state.
And I'm going to chime in with one other thing that Katie made me think about, and that I think is also part of the value proposition, and that is our nonprofit community. I look and I see what nonprofits are doing across the state, and particularly in y'all's community. And that is not something to be taken for granted. With a lot of these entities, as we look at their counterparts in other states and other places, the amount of community support, the amount of corporate support, the amount of engagement is really phenomenal. And I say that because that, particularly in times like this, or even in regular times when there are always needs in our community, just knowing that these entities are out there and they're supported is huge. And I think y'all are seeing a lot of heroes right now in the nonprofit space, in the business world, particularly at hospitals, just all over our community. And that's inspiring stuff. And that's where we turn and say, this is where, we want a company to come and land and see what that looks like, because we stick and we support and we engage.
I do want to just jump in for a quick second. I know Katie had mentioned this, but Representative Wheeler responded. He said of the $1.8 billion of the CARES Act, $250 million will reimburse counties and cities for coronavirus expenses.
And Representative, thank you so much for bringing that up. I will tell you the work that is happening in our counties and cities, Mayor, that y'all are doing. I mean, it cannot be duplicated. Whether it's public safety and making sure that our police force is well supported, or fire, or whatever that may be, or even sanitation and other things. I think people forget the vital role that our cities and counties play in making our economy run. And so thank you for doing what you're doing and continuing to keep that up and making sure we all are the beneficiary of your hard work. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Call any other questions? I have a few more, if not.
Keep rolling. It's your show right now.
Okay. So Katie, do you mind talking about the various government initiatives that businesses need to be aware of? Anything that you need to let us know?
I will tell you, and one thing I probably should have mentioned when you ask about the task force is just seeing that businesses across the state are putting safety first. Safety of their employees, safety of their customers. It's been really inspiring to see not only the innovation we've seen on how people move their products, and I do think, as Lee mentioned, we're going to be stronger because of this, because once we have some small businesses that have learned how to move those products via social media or in another avenue online, they'll not only be able to open their doors and have customers come in, but they'll also be able to serve customers that they may have not had the opportunity to reach before. So I know that we're going to continue to provide resources to help smaller businesses that may not have the tools to be able to do that, learn to do that. So we're excited about that. But one thing, going back to health and safety, I would say the governor's proclamation that she issued there on May 8th is a huge step in helping businesses have the clarity and the confidence to reopen. So we had heard from manufacturers, some of our largest ones, down to some of the smallest businesses, that were just concerned, if I do everything right and I try hard and I follow CDC guidelines and public health recommendations, and there is someone who may or may not have contracted coronavirus, while in my business or at work, I'm afraid of the liability that will ensue there. And so what the governor has done is she has not protected reckless behavior. If there is intentional misconduct or someone is reckless, they are not protected and they should not be. We want to make sure that we are encouraging business to open safely and responsibly. But if you are doing that, and obviously with the unknowns about, there's so many unknowns with regards to Corona, what her proclamation does is it gives businesses that are doing those things a safe harbor to say, you will be protected from litigation with regards to this. So I think it's an excellent balance. I think it's a real win for our economy and enable to get people, back up and running.
And I may chime in with a resource, and I know BCA is supportive of this as well. I think we've been remiss in mentioning at this one-stop platform that's been built through the governor's office. It's called altogetheralabama.org. It is a one-stop platform that we hope Alabamians are familiar with or will be familiar with, that really is intended to lend a hand during this crisis to really provide information in one website. It was launched by Governor Ivey about a month or so ago. Again, it's, time escapes me right now, a year, a month, a lifetime. But the goal of this is really to provide Alabamians with information for relief and assistance, whether you're an individual, a business, a nonprofit, a municipality. It's really support for other industries that the site adds in as federal and state agencies have information that's available. So it's constantly updated. And the concept is really a coordinated effort to provide policymakers and businesses and foundations and even the general public with a couple of things. One is information about how the crisis is impacting all of us, hardworking Alabamians. And the second is to provide opportunities to assist business owners and workers. And so I know BCA and Alabama Power and Opportunity Alabama and others have been supporters. I think some of the latest information on the site is related to PPP, economic injury disaster loan, employee retention tax credits, payroll tax deferrals, expanded paid leave and FMLA, federal grant preparedness, private philanthropy and municipal assistance programs. They've got folks that are really scanning for all kinds of grants that are popping up on a regular basis. So I just say that because that's another platform that anybody can go to and either get information or request information.
And we've used that a lot. We actually have that as a link on our COVID-19 webpage. So it is a tremendous amount. You were listing a lot of the things that you can gather off that website, and that's an enormous amount of information. So we're getting close to the end. I've probably got 10,000 more questions, but I'll limit it to a couple. But Lee, what do you see as our greatest challenges as a city? And when I say the city, I'm Hoover. I mean the Birmingham-Hoover metropolitan area. Sure. As we kind of navigate and emerge out of this, how do you see it?
I'll hit one that I think is significant. It's a priority for our company, and it is significant not just for your region but across our state, and it impacts all of us. But it's bridging that digital divide. We're seeing now more than ever this age of extended teleworking and virtual learning. It is critical for people throughout our state, and particularly in this community, to have access to tools for success and a better quality of life. We're seeing that whether it's with children in school, like I know Katie's children and my son, just folks at work, just to be able to get groceries, keep in touch with family. So I say that because Alabama Power's current grid fiber deployment that we've been working on that's supporting these smart technologies and systems to make them more resilient has been, I think has been helpful, but we've got to have additional broadband access that creates more economic development opportunities. We've got strategic partnerships in place. You probably read a little with C-Spire. And I'll tell you, the Alabama Rural Broadband Coalition has been extremely important. BCA is another member. Again, all these collaborations. But I think we'd be remiss if we did not have broadband in that discussion, a centerpiece at all levels of government because of just those impacts to all of us.
You're in my opinion, dead on. That's so Katie, what I guess the BCA, but you yourself, what do y'all see as the biggest concerns that we have weeks ahead? The data, you're collecting lots of data.
Yes.
A lot of information in front of you. So what's our biggest concerns, or your biggest concerns?
I would say a couple things is what we're hearing, and that's childcare. So, you've got with obviously trying to keep current safety and health guidelines and care for children, it's really a workforce issue. It's just kind of sort of this full circle dynamic. And so we have people that want to go back to work, but need childcare. And with the current limitations, that's made it challenging. Obviously, you've got a lot of people that are wondering, maybe they had plans for their children for this summer, and maybe those summer plans have been, moved down or changed around. And so really, we've got to take a look at that and kind of figure out how we can find a workable solution that puts health and safety first, but also allows us to continue to keep our economy moving. I would say, we are hearing a good bit about the unemployment funds. So as we all know, I think that the goal when they passed the legislation there in DC was keep the economy moving, right? Like, let's push money down into our economy to keep it flowing. Well, when that happened, there were several things that the precision that was needed, either didn't have the time or was not there. One of those in particular is unemployment. And so as we know, there was a blanket $600 that was given to every state across the nation. As you mentioned earlier, with cost of living in some states, and Lee also discussed, it costs more to live in California than it does in Alabama. So if you take our $275 that you get from unemployment in Alabama plus the $600 from federal, that's $875 a week. You do the math on that, you're getting about $21.87 an hour on unemployment. And so that makes it hard to really get your workforce to kind of want to return to work in several cases. So then what you have is you have a PPP loan that you have to bring your employees back. If your employees don't come back, you can't meet that threshold. And so there's kind of a vicious cycle with regards to that. So trying to figure out how we navigate that in an effective way is another thing that we're getting a lot of questions about right now. And then I would say, we mentioned earlier, we have a business-friendly legislature and executive branch, and we are so proud of that. I would say if we can get a special session called, I think there are several issues that need to be dealt with. And so I would encourage all of you to not only thank the governor with regards to her proclamation, the safe harbor for business, but do realize that ends when the state of emergency ends. And so it is imperative that we get some legislation that codifies that in a meaningful way. And so the sooner we can get a special session called, we all know there are several issues that need to be taken care of, but that safe harbor provision is one of them. So also talking with your legislators and making sure that they understand some of the needs and the concerns that we have out there, so that when they do get to go back, they've got all the facts to make effective decisions.
Well, the issue brought up on healthcare, on daycare. We've been a squeaky wheel here in Hoover, and Mr. Bonner has, and the health officer has received a letter from us encouraging them to move pretty quickly on that, because it's a big issue, and it's gonna be even bigger if we want to get everybody back to work. It's so important. I know that we are about, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I wanted to ask both of you, Paul, is there anything holding up?
Yeah, the only one, it's actually kind of a combination of Greg Knighton and Representative Wheeler, some good minds thinking alike there, but they both basically said the pandemic has exposed our serious deficiencies of rural broadband for telemedicine and online education, and how that impacts the economic development. Another issue that surfaced during that time is cybersecurity. So the question is, how do we leverage that industry where Alabama and Hoover have so many assets? How do we leverage that, and how do we, as I guess leaders and being fortunate, how do we leverage that to some of our more rural and areas that could use some economic development and telemedicine, and where broadband isn't as proficient.
I can speak a bit. Let's see, that was a lot. So let's see, I'll hit the rural piece. And what I'll say is, most of our state, a lot of our state is rural. And even if you don't live in a rural area, you are impacted. So this is one of those where it's not just us, them, us. So, I would tell you that we all have to put an emphasis on how we're looking at what rural economic development looks like. We have a rural initiative that we do through the Economic Development Association of Alabama. These issues are really part of what that initiative is looking at, because yes, we're seeing the pandemic exposing this, but the issues have always been there and opportunities are there. So I think we've really got to take these issues at hand and really leverage the timing of those opportunities. And again, I would say broadband in rural areas is critical. It's we have to make sure that we've got the ability to have access across our state for everyone to benefit.
And I would just echo what Lee said. I mean, we have to keep the pressure on there. I think we've made great strides over the last couple of years, but no matter what it is, if it's business and being able, to run a credit card at a gas station, whether it is for school for children. I mean, Lee referenced it earlier beautifully, but the divide between the have and have nots with regards to education right now, we see that divide growing even greater in this pandemic, and making sure that we take the necessary steps so that doesn't happen in the future. I mean, everyone has heard the story about the child in rural Alabama having to go to McDonald's to get Wi-Fi in order to be able to do, in order to be able to do their homework or research. And that's if they're fortunate enough to have someone who has a device that they can utilize. So, thinking about those things, and then telemedicine, and as we have struggles with our rural hospitals across the state, that becomes even more important. And in the very places where we need it is where the access is not there. So I think that we've made great strides, certainly appreciate it, but we have to keep our foot on the gas.
And I don't think it's fair to just say it's a statewide issue. There are areas in Birmingham and probably even more closely
Absolutely.
in Hoover that don't have some of these. I'd give Hoover City Schools a lot of credit for sending out the buses with the Wi-Fi so that those students had access. But it is, that's right. Yes, it's not just a rural, black belt issue. It's a city and a more regional issue as well. So.
And I'll tell you, again, that gets back to your workforce. When we go about recruiting businesses to come to our state or expand, we have to have a prepared workforce. And so you want children having these opportunities to be educated and to learn for a lot of reasons, but also it's because we all grow up and we want them to be able to prepare to be a part of that workforce. And that's got to be an opportunity for all. It just does. So.
Paul, Greg Knighton has a question on cybersecurity. If you could let him jump on and talk about that.
Hey, thank you. No, they're great questions and big issues. Obviously, and I know David Custard's on the call from McLeod Software. They deal with cybersecurity threats as part of the transportation industry. Certainly, the platform we're on right now has experienced during the COVID impact a number of cyber-related issues. The utility industry, many businesses. We're so fortunate to have great assets in the state and in Birmingham and in Hoover tied to the cybersecurity. I just wonder, again, kind of like life sciences, what your thoughts are on how we leverage those assets and help, I think to what is a growing need and sector in economic development.
Yeah, I would tell you, I'd put it right up there at the top as well. That is, you can't be playing in the digital space and not have strong cybersecurity. We've got a lot of opportunity in our state in terms to leverage what we already have existing in the sector and to grow that. So I'd put there right there at the top. And again, that's going to be a focus area for us. And we'd love to partner, across the state and the region as opportunities pop up, or as we can go out and proactively look for those business development opportunities. So absolutely.
Absolutely. And you can count us in on that as well. I will say it will be top priority as people, we've all, or those of us who have been fortunate enough to be able to serve or work remotely. I think what it's done is it's kind of taken that, how am I going to say this? It's going to be very difficult to tell an employee that's been effectively working remotely that they no longer can do that. So I think you're going to see a lot more teleworking and telecommuting. And so I think that cybersecurity that's already been at the very top of the list is just going to be at the very tip top moving forward. And I will say we are committed to being a partner in that too. I often tell people one thing about working in a Senate office, and Allison can speak to this, and this is certainly in no way saying anything different about a congressional office, but they serve a certain area. When you work in a Senate office, you get to see from top to the bottom of the state how everyone presents themselves, where they are, what they're doing, and what they, the neat things that are going on. And that's very similar to the role Lee and I are in now as well. I will tell you, we don't do a good enough job as Alabamians telling our story, telling it not only to the rest of the world, but even to each other. And so I think elevating what all you are doing here to other parts of the state and finding synergies is something we all need to be remain committed to.
We got some definite ideas, and I'll be in touch with you both.
That's awesome.
You just, Lee, you expect a phone call because you just hit a little button for us that we want to talk about.
All right. I love working with Greg, so that works great.
So, well, I want to be respectful of y'all's time, and we're coming up on an hour. I've got just pages I could ask you here, but I won't do that. I wanted to give each of you just a couple of minutes, if you need it, just if you have any closing thoughts. I'll start with you, Lee.
Okay. One, I would like to, on behalf of Alabama Power, to thank you for this opportunity. Just to even be on this call and help share information with this community. I would also want to recognize y'all for the leadership that y'all always have. You're a very strong community. You've got strong leadership. Just the nature of how y'all collaborate across the region, is so valuable to those of us that play in this space in terms of how we can provide support for you. So I say that because just we admire the way Hoover is run and led, the community that you serve. And, when we think about how we partner at the state level with leaders like Secretary Canfield and his team and others, it really makes supporting the entire state, but also this region, a pleasure. It's really fun to come to work, even at times when coming to work means walking 10 steps from my kitchen to the study versus driving downtown. So again, I just thank you for this. And as there is follow-up things that we can work on and collaborate on, between myself and Tony Smoke in the Birmingham division and others, just know we're here to serve, and we're always happy to help.
That's very, very kind of you. Thank you very much. Katie?
Yes, again, Lee said it beautifully. We are certainly very proud to be your partner and proud to work with you and see everything that's going on in that community. I will tell you, I get to experience firsthand when I come for soccer tournaments. So I feel like I contribute to the economy there in Hoover several times a year. I tell you what, but you really are doing everything just first class. And thank you for the leadership you show. Thank you for what you're doing for not only Hoover, but obviously it flows into the entire Birmingham community and region. We certainly appreciate it. We certainly appreciate the partnership of Alabama Power and the work that Lee does to continue to recruit people to our state and make sure that we're providing the right resources for them to grow and flourish here. And we thank the Chamber. I mean, obviously, BCA has a very strong partnership with the Chamber of Commerce Association of Alabama and the chambers. And without that, we certainly wouldn't be able to do what we do. So thank you there at the Hoover Chamber for what you do. And thank you for being our partner. And the last thing I would leave you with is we stand ready to help. We want to hear what's going on because we want to make sure that we're hitting the right notes and that our messaging is correct and that what we are doing is helping you all be better. And so please don't hesitate to call us at BCA and let us know how we can be better advocates, better partners, and know that we stand ready to do that.
Lee,
just put a little more pressure on you as soon as we can get this. Hey, the state will really be happy.
Oh, I love it. You have no idea. My brother-in-law, I mean, I think I get a daily text. He has a softball team from my children's soccer coach. It's like, is that going to move? Is that going to move? I'm like, I'm trying.
This locked down more than the restaurants. No, I'm just kidding.
Let me tell you something, softball was probably one of the most meaningful things that I did, learning how to work as a team and lead growing up. So I love seeing a good softball on the screen.
Well, I am so grateful for y'all. This has been I can't believe an hour has gone by, to be honest with you. There's so much more we could talk about, but thank you to both of y'all, what you mean to our state, and we're so grateful that you're close to us and we can call on you and so involved so much. And thank you. I can't say enough about both of you and what you mean to our state, and certainly to the Birmingham-Hoover metropolitan area. We're very, very grateful. And with that, Paul, thank you for hosting this again. April, Chamber, we're grateful that you have continued to put these on for us. So with that said, I think it is a little after 12, actually. So thank you for giving us a few extra minutes. We'll see you on the road somewhere, I'm sure. Bye-bye.
Bye.